Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I am so grateful to have the opportunity to be here amongst you today, to be amongst winners, real winners who've done something that really made a difference to the people who you work with. I'm really proud of that. You know, a few years ago, and Linda mentioned it, I was working in the Central North Sea, and one of the offshore installations that worked there won the Sword of Honour. And I know how proud they were of that achievement. And I know what a difference it makes to you and to the people who work in your organisations to see this recognition. I think it's wonderful that we're here today to celebrate success. I think that one of the things about safety is that we very often measure our performance by the number of people who are hurt, which I always think is rather a peculiar thing, because there are many people alive today because of what you've done. There are people who have their arms and their legs and their fingers and who aren't hurt because of the extraordinary things that you and your teams have done. And I think that's something that we should celebrate, and I'm very pleased to be part of it today. I have to confess, however, I do feel somewhat of a fraud, as I certainly haven't won anything, but it's wonderful to have the chance to share this afternoon with you. Now, I have in fact spent my entire career working in what I would consider to be really safety critical industries. And I have had some very proud moments over that career, but I can honestly say that both the highest points of my career, but also the lowest points, have been connected with safety. The things that I'm proudest of are when we've had teams that have achieved fantastic safety performance. But sadly, I have also had the experience, of course, of being involved in some dreadful tragedies, and those are without question the lowlights and the low points in my life. You see, I now believe that safety is of course, it's a moral and ethical responsibility for all business leaders to impart in their organisation. But I also believe that safety and performance, business performance, go hand in hand. There is no conflict between the idea of a safe organisation and a high-performance organisation. And I think everybody here in this room would absolutely agree with that. But there still are some organisations where performance is everything and where safety lags. And I think we need to go out into those industries as ambassadors and talk about the way safety and performance go hand in hand. Now, Linda, she said that she remembers one of the things that I used to do is to say, first of all, how can you do it safely? It made me smile because I haven't changed much, because I still do exactly that. I say whenever we have a new project or a new job or a new task to perform, the first thing I say is, how are we going to do this safely? Because if you drive safety right from the beginning, you do achieve a different kind of engagement with your people, and you achieve a different business outcome. Now, what is an oil and gas man, you may ask, running the railway in Britain? Well, they're both actually quite remarkably similar industries in many respects. They're operationally very intense, there's big projects, and they're politically very sensitive, they're economically vital, but of course, most importantly of all, they are safety critical. And actually, it's completely true when I tell you that the reason why I was attracted to do the Chief Executive's job at Network Rail was because when I looked at the workforce safety performance in Network Rail, I thought it was really unacceptably poor. And I thought to myself, if that company's safety performance is so poor, there's a fantastic opportunity here, not just from a moral and ethical perspective to improve that, but to also drive better performance in the company as well. But let me take a step back. There are three things that I believe that in these sorts of complex industries that one, as a leader, that you have to have right and that you have to relentlessly pay attention to. The first is engineering excellence, real technical excellence to ensure that the products you're producing or the trains that we're running or the oil and gas platforms that we're producing have the technical excellence to be operated safely. The second is that you have the management systems and the processes and the competence systems to ensure that you can operate those systems correctly. And of course, the third, it's about the attitudes and the behaviors of the people who work in your industry. And I think as a leader, one of the biggest challenges that we have is to juggle those three balls, the engineering, the management systems, and the behaviors, and never lose sight of any one of them. You have to have a sort of chronic unease the entire time to make sure that you're keeping your eye on all of those three balls at once. Now, my passion for the engineering excellence was really born from a very early experience in my own life when I was the Shell focal point for an appalling tragedy in the North Sea, which some of you will have heard of, the Piper Alpha disaster, where 167 people were killed in 1988. And there were a lot of factors that went into that terrible disaster, but engineering and the inadequate design of facilities at that time was a really common factor. And it was common in the railway industry at the same time as well. And there were numerous appalling train accidents in the UK in the 80s and 90s. You will remember them. Clapham Junction, Ladbroke Grove, Hatfield, Potters Bar. Tragedies that cost the lives of many, many people. Today, I'm enormously proud of what we're doing in terms of passenger and public safety on railways. Through engineering excellence, we now run the safest passenger railway in Europe. 4.5 million people every day travel on Britain's railway network, and it is the safest in Europe through the quality of the inspection and the rigorous systems and processes that we use to ensure that. I'm not complacent. When I talk about the juggling of the balls and that chronic unease, I can assure you it's relentless. But we should also sometimes, when you're climbing a mountain, pause and look back and admire the view and see where you've come from. And certainly on rail safety, we've made some fantastic improvements. We've also made amazing improvements on level crossing safety. I don't know if you know this, but in this country we have 6,500 level crossings. They crisscross our railway network in an extraordinary way because these footpaths were laid out long before the Victorians built the railways. 5,000 of these level crossings, the only safety precaution is a sign that says stop, look and listen. Now, I believe that the safest level crossing is a closed level crossing. And we've been closing them at an incredible rate, and I will continue to drive that. We have closed 1,000 level crossings in the last 10 years, and today we have the safest level crossings also in Europe. But there's so much more to do. I talked about engineering excellence. The second thing I talked about was management systems and competencies and those processes. All of those things, those controls that you know that you have to have in place to run a railway or any other business safely. But the third point I'd like to spend a little bit of time on is on behaviours. You know, it's the people at the sharp end of our businesses who actually are the ones who get hurt. They're the ones who are the most likely to get injured. And I think one of the things that we need to really embed in our organisations, and it's a huge challenge that I face every day, is to how to embed that belief that safety and performance go hand in hand amongst the people at the sharp end. And one of the things that I found is that if I go and talk to my people at the front line on the railway, and if I go and say to them at the beginning, how can we improve performance? It immediately breeds suspicion. It immediately breeds in their mind the idea that I'm going to try and fire some of them, that I'm going to find a way of cutting costs and doing without them. And it doesn't really engage them in the challenge that we have. But if I go to them and say, how can we work safer? How can I help you to work more safely? It demonstrates a care and an empathy that brings them in. And then they start to say, well, we could do this and we could do that. And because safety and performance go hand in hand, we not only get a greater degree of safety, but we also improve business performance. And the more that you engage those people, the more you bring in their creativity, the more you start to create a culture, a culture that values diversity, that values different ideas, and the ones that really has that spirit to be better every day. Now, I can assure you that there are many, probably most companies here that are in a completely different place to the industry that I currently work in. We have a long way to go, but I'm absolutely determined that we will, strive to achieve the safety performance and deserve to sit with you at those tables in the future. But of course, frontline workers behave in a certain way because of the culture that exists in an organization. And that culture is created by the leaders in the company. So if my first question to people is about how do we do it safely, I promise you that my very first question when I'm interviewing anybody for a job, and the first thing I think about is this person a safety leader? Is this somebody who is going to drive forward the culture in the organization that I want? Because managing safety and changing safety culture is hard. It's really difficult because you've got to change the behaviors of thousands of people. And if you can do that, then of course you can do anything as a leader. So I really believe that paying attention to safety as a core value of what you expect of leaders is just absolutely critical. And it's what I demand of people who want to succeed in the organizations that I run. And when you get this right, it's unbelievable what you can achieve. And I was talking to His Excellency earlier on today about a project that we both know well, the Shell Qatar GTL project, that achieved 80 million man-hours without a lost time injury. 80 million man-hours, an extraordinary achievement. But when you went and visited this project when it was being built, you could feel it. There were thousands of people working on this site, and they were smiling, they were happy, because they were cared for, they were looked after, they had fantastic facilities, and they were demonstrably enthusiastic about the safety culture. And they were also looked after from a health perspective. And I think that too often the H part of safety health is too small. We don't spend enough time as professionals thinking about health. It actually affects far more people than directly safety, but it's an unseen side of our business. And we need to, as leaders, to spend as much time thinking about health as we do about safety. So I'm just enormously proud to be here today. I really am. I'm really mighty chuffed, actually. But I tell you what, I would so rather be sitting with you than standing here. I would so much rather be a winner than standing here. And that's what I'm going to try and do. That's what I'm going to try and lead my organisation to do, because I think celebrating your success in this kind of way is something that all leaders should aspire to. Well done, and thank you.